Hi, I'm Eamon Fennell. Welcome to another episode of the Hot Ball with AIG and Dublin GAA. On this episode, we're going to be talking to former Dublin captain Coman Goggins on his time in a Dublin jersey. And we're also going to be talking to him as he moves into his new role as a TV pundit with TG Catter. Hope you enjoyed. How are you, first of all, before we kick into things? You keeping well?
I'm living the dream here every day. Busy house. We've 3 kids here ranging from 5 to 11. So between Anne and Barry and fractions, I'm struggling. I was never too hot in the fractions. So Anne and Barry, I can just about manage. Fractions is a stretch. But look, we're getting through it. It's tough on everyone, whether you have kids, whether you're single. It's been an unprecedented time for everyone across the country. So hopefully there's a bit of light coming now on the back of the phase 2 piece and a bit of GAA maybe on the 29th of July. It was passing the local park there, and there was 3 teams out doing a bit, so I won't give away the age groups of the club, but they were out doing a small bit, so things are starting to lift again, so that's great. It gives you missed the old Sunday game team tune, so if we can get that back again, we'll be doing okay.
And you now have an excuse to get out of the house, back working with the GAA again, so it's all good. No more Anne and Barry and fractions.
I'm Tom Raid, we're back already. Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to push in that one as well. It hasn't seemed to land with her yet, so I'll let you know when I get it over the line. But I'm not too bad. I haven't got fractions yet. The Anne and Barry stuff I can deal with. The fractions, when I start getting the advocates out, I'll be giving you a call then. But the structure of this, as I was kind of saying to you before we went live here, I very much just want to talk about your career, but also just about certain elements of your time with Dublin that we haven't really touched on in previous episodes. And I think the big starting point for me is Ballinteer, your club. Were you the first person from Ballinteer to play for the Dublin senior football team?
I think it was. Yeah, it was never something that I set out to do now, so it's not something that I go shouting and roaring about. At Ballinteer, I came into the Dublin squad the end of late 99, so Ballinteer was only founded in the 80s, so it was a young enough club. So, they had built up through the age groups, in the late 90s, early to mid 90s, we started drifting through junior leagues. I did a leaving cert in 95 and kind of drifted out into what was the junior team at that time. Now that was full of guys who, were bearded and they were men, So this fledgling coming, I had a bit of, wet newspaper to try and make it look like a bit of stuff. So I was struggling to fit in there, but there was some great characters coming up with that team. So from 95, this kind of new younger batch started to drift into the junior team, and we won a junior championship, got promoted. We then won the intermediate championship as we were coming up along. So there was this young group, and as part of that, then you were getting this chance to shine with a young team. Had been brought to there by these much older guys in the club, we'll say, who were the founding members of it, I guess, So it's just, I won't say right time, right place, but certainly you were with a group of young players who were getting an opportunity to play, and we were new and fresh, and people were taking note of it, I guess, So probably the opportunity, the way the club was going at the time, just meant that, people were getting spotted. So there was plenty of guys were capable of playing. A couple of us got lucky to get there in the end.
Well, you kind of mentioned there that the older crop of people, it was relatively a new club, but there was a good country element there. I remember going up to the clubhouse one day, and some fella, absolute gentleman, I think his name might have been Mick, pulled me aside and said, I'm the reason you're playing for Dublin. I was like, oh, enlighten me, tell me why. He said, oh, you played us here in the league game, and you had a good game. And I got on to Davy.
I'm delighted there. I thought you were going to drop a bombshell and he'd say he was your father or something. That would have been an exclusive.
Wow, I wouldn't look good in the Ballinteer colours. He said he rang Davy Billins after the game and said, look, you need to check this fella out. And Davy said, actually, we've been watching him for a while. We must bring him out. So,
was it a club league game in Ballinteer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember the game. Yeah, I didn't think you were great, but look.
Yeah, I think your man was in the pub house drinking at the time, so that's why.
He wasn't the fellow with the guide dog.
But there was a good country element there of all people. And you have obviously your relations in Roscommon, isn't it? That your links there.
Yeah, look, I suppose a lot of the clubs, there was a huge country element. People who would come working in Dublin then that wanted to, nail down their roots in a particular area. So Ballinteer as a an area, I guess, was new. People who moved into it were, probably from different parts of the country. Like I think probably the founder members, there's Kerry, there's Roscommon, there's Mayo. There's a lot of country folk within it, I guess. So some of the guys who were playing ball were hardened country footballers. So it was a good learning in the early stages of your footballing career, that's for sure. Like I probably am a little bit of an exception to the rule in that when I was coming through, the age group changed. It was September was the month of your birth, which meant you were in that group for underage football. And then it moved to December 31 or January 1st. So the team I was with when we were 13, 14 kind of fell away a bit. So I've been playing soccer for a while. I went to school in Clashdown. The guys from Kilmacud Crokes had come into Clashdown and said, any fellas interested in playing GAA? Much and all as it probably broke my dad's heart. I went up to Kilmacud for a couple of years. I was involved with teams that Pat Duggan had been involved in. But I was a late bloomer, I guess. I was light. I was probably not as physical as a lot of the guys who were knocking around those Crokes first teams, And I had a passion or an interest in going back to Ballinteer. My dad was looking after teams there. So, I had a bit of success in Crokes. We won a minor B championship, I think it was. Johnny McGee, Mick O'Keefe, Ray Cosgrove. A couple of those guys were a year below me. So they played on the minor B team in my minor year, we'd say. So I drifted back to Ballinteer, started getting involved with that junior team, as it was, we'd say, around that time. It was probably, I was 18, I guess, whatever, thereabouts. Started getting involved with that. So I didn't have any minor trials with Dublin or any of that kind of stuff because I was kind of drifting between clubs. And similarly into 21s, when you were trying to, make a breakthrough there, Ballinteer was a new club. I'm not saying that it had an impact, but you had the stronger, obviously, clubs who had, 2-3 guys who were showing for positions. So it was always difficult to try and break into that versus the development squad piece now where guys are being assessed based on their football and ability, and maybe the club isn't as important at the level of they're playing at. If they're good enough, they get brought in for a look. So I guess, the upbringing I had was playing a bit of football with these country guys who were hardening up a little bit, given that I was a bit late in terms of filling out, or I was quite light and not as physical as some of the other guys at that time, I'd
say. Well, in regards to physicality, I'm going to jump forward here and we'll come back.
Yeah.
In the physicality side of it, like I remember a half-back line of you, Patter Andrews, Collie Moore and Johnny McGee. That's a big, strong half-back line.
We should have won more matches given there was 4 of us playing in 3 positions, but we won't tell anyone. Maybe that was never picked up.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention Davy Henry as well, but he didn't fit into that physicality bracket. But you know what I mean? You were big and strong. No, it was a big, strong physical line. I always remember it. And if you look at the current crop now, the likes of Jack, James, they're just flyers. It's a different type of dynamic. Yeah. That physicality, I thought probably the most physical line on the Dublin team for a long time was that half-back line.
Yeah, and I guess if you think back to Keith Barrs and Johnny McGee's and these fellas, the style of football at that time was maybe more of a holding role. And don't get me wrong, those fellas could play football. So I'm not saying that they weren't able to do that by any means, and they could move across the field, as you well know. So you look now at the 6th position. It's about a guy holding that position. It's about being very mobile and being able to move around the field. And I guess when you look at the current Dublin crop and that interchangeable element that applies, where guys can play pretty much anywhere. Kieran Kilkenny can start half forward and be wing back and midfield all in the one game. So maybe at that time guys were more conditioned to particular areas of the field or positions, and that was where the physical thing at 6 and 3 was real stopper stuff, and then the 5s and 7s were a little bit more pacey, I guess, in terms of trying to attack up the field. Cornerbacks in the late 90s and early 2000s, you weren't supposed to be able to play football, when you got the ball, fellas were shouting, mark up, Godsey has it. So
let him have it.
Yeah, that's just the way of it, I guess, So, but certainly the game has changed, guys. Skill levels are totally different, but that came at, getting into weights programs and stuff. It probably just the way I filled out was just a bit late getting to the party. And it was probably Sigerson football in college when I started getting into, weights and a different type of training along with the stuff you were doing with the club. I was in Maynooth. The manager there at the time was a guy, John Blessing was his name, who kind of got you thinking a little bit different about how you were playing football. And it was from there then you started, getting interest in, Dublin junior teams, where I initially gravitated from after a sojourn down in Roscommon for a bit of a season,
But yeah, you kind of bounced around a bit there between college, the Dublin minor teams, and coming through development squads. And did you notice any talent, like when you were talking about when you were with Crokes? You've obviously seen the likes of Johnny McGee. Did you see other players from different clubs and go, oh, he has a better chance because he's with Crokes. I'll really struggle here with Ballinteer. Was that ever in the back of your mind?
Yeah, look, I touched on that a little bit. There probably was at that time that, if you thought of the big clubs as they were, so, Vincent's obviously a successful club, Crokes, your Ballybodens, if you Nafeen or Raheny obviously had great guys involved with teams as well at that time. If you scan through them, there's a lot of familiar names. At the time I was coming through with guys with big clubs. So it's not so much that, maybe I wasn't good enough, but I'm not going standing here and saying I should have been in squads. I would, at that time, up to minor, I wasn't playing enough consistent football to even be considered, so probably never an option. Into 21s, you choke for trials, and trials are hit and miss because every fella is trying to be out for his own, so you get one shot at it. Other guys have been through minor squads or might have played 21 previously, so somebody involved knows them or has been involved. So there was that bit of a challenge against it, I guess. So you weren't getting a chance at 13 to show your way. It was get in on a Saturday morning and try and see if you could force your way into a squad. So you certainly got a feeling that the bigger clubs maybe had a little bit more sway in getting guys involved. But I didn't have a huge thing for I need to leave the club in order to get an opportunity. My thing was I wanted to play with Ballinteer. That's not meant in a slight
yeah. It's a sly dig at me. I know it is.
No, not in any way. It was very much a case of, look, my dad was involved with Ballinteer. I had brothers who were playing as well, so I just wanted to be involved there. And obviously, because I was in school in Closhdown, a lot of pals I had were involved with Crokes, Ballyboden, different clubs because of the way Closhdown drags guys in. Whereas Ballinteer was very much with the guys that were around the area. So it was different set of guys that you were playing with really.
So when you came into the Dublin setup, then you would have known a few of them lads from your Closhdown days then that were probably in around the Dublin panel then as well, would you?
Yeah, there was a few guys that I was aware of, to give you a run of. In 98, 99, I played 2 years with the Dublin juniors. So to have availed of that, obviously you can't have played senior club championships. So there was guys involved with that who had come in and out of Dublin setups at the time. And we got a good run at JJ Martin, who was Thomas Davis, was looking after the team. So, we had some couple of good games, a good run. We played Kildare and Meath in a game in Croke Park as well. And it was on the back of, those type of performances then that, you got to watch other guys playing on Dublin senior games afterwards or whatever, or in the club circuit where we were intermediate. You maybe weren't playing against the senior teams at the initial time you broke through, So while you knew some of the faces, you were still quite green to a lot of the guys who were knocking around the place. And then you think of some of the guys who were in the dressing room in late 99, 2000 when I came in, like All-Ireland winners, Jim, Gavin, Paul Curran, Desi Farrell, like big hitters, who you would have stood on the hill and, gawped at, and now you were trying to sit in beside them and pretend you were trying to be as good as them. So it was daunting to walk in because they were such, big household names and serious operators both on and off the field.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I kind of struggled with when I first came onto the panel. I remember sitting next to J.O. Wheelo, Collymore and Shane Ryan, Paddy Christie, we're all just on the bench with me and it's going, what am I doing here? It can be overwhelming, it can be daunting, especially when you're from, for me at the time with O'Toole's coming through, I was the only one on the team from O'Toole's. But then, you start to get to know players, and then Johnny McNally comes into the setup, everything becomes a bit more familiar then as well, and you might have seen some of the junior lads coming through. Did it start getting a bit easier for you? Because now coming on the first 2 years didn't really probably go the way you would have liked, but towards 2001, 2002, you started playing really good football then.
Yeah, when I came in at the end of 99, I think there was league matches probably in the winter time, which should have suited me, but funny enough didn't. So the first kind of season with Tommy Carr, I didn't play any league games, and we played a game against Cavan in the Phoenix Park, I think it was, and I damaged an Achilles. So here was this fella from Ballinteer who'd been brought into this senior team, and we used to be training the barracks in Rathmines, which was a grim place at the best of times. It just always seemed to be cold in there, and I was sat in it. There was a weights room at the top of the hall, and I was spending most of the time in there, and you suddenly start to go, this lad's walking by this door going, what's the story with this fella? He comes out to the panel, he's in there lifting a few 5k dumbbells and thinks he's Mr. Muscle. So you're then starting to wonder if you're going to get a chance at this at all. But in fairness to Tommy Carr, he said, look, get yourself right, and then we'll do a proper assessment of where you're at in terms of the ability. Obviously there was something spotted that they thought we'll bring this guy into the setup. So it was, building into championship in late May, I'd say early June. and we were in Parnell Park training, and Tommy gave me the old curly finger, which was, you know, the week into championship. So I was expecting, look, you're going great and all that, but we've only got 24 spaces to fill here at 26. Unfortunately, you know, you're not going to make the cut. So that was where I was kind of expecting it to land. So it was before Wexford 2000 was a championship debut, and he called me across and he said, look, we're starting you in the corner on the weekend or whatever, you know. So it was a bit of a, you know, now it's becoming a bit of a reality. So the thing you've dreamt about for a long time is now suddenly happening. But he said, look, you know, don't go around saying it and it'll be announced, and then just try and keep your head down and see what happens in terms of the game. So, you know, when I came in first in the Dublin setup, I was kind of thriving on the fact that something had been spotted. There was a bit of ability there that had been recognised. So you were able to go out and play and trade on that a little bit. The more I went into the career, I probably started then questioning stuff rather than actually just playing more in without the inhibitions that come as you start thinking more about stuff, you know?
What do you think that ability was? What do you think it was that they saw in you?
Jeez, good question. We probably need to do another podcast. Look, I was quite pacey, you know. I would have kind of backed myself on in a race or in a situation around speed. I was quite tidy as a defender. Like I certainly wasn't the biggest guy, but I was tidy in terms of, well, I would have thought in terms of the defensive work. So I would have spent a lot of time on, you know, tackling and blocking and, you know, just being a general, you know, sticky enough kind of cornerback. So I would imagine that when they were watching, we'll say, Sigerson games or maybe Dublin junior games, that some of those attacking traits came out and that defensive ability came out. And there was something different that maybe offered a different route for them in terms of maybe somebody to put in cornerback is where I actually started out in 2000, we'll say, where there was a bit of pace, there was a bit of flair. There wasn't a fear in terms of going on and attacking with the ball. And, you know, I'm never going to claim I was the greatest footballer ever. Maybe there was some football ability there that just was something a little bit different at the time. So, you know, I'm never going to make out that I was the greatest fella ever, but certainly there was something that was spotted that then the groups of managers that I've had over the years were able to hone a little bit and gave me the time I had in the jersey.
Yeah, well, I must start rerouting the water from Ballinteer down to my house because between yourself, Nicky, and Gillick, like, there's just pace to burn in Ballinteer, so I could do with some of that myself.
I won an All-Ireland relay medal with David's brother John, who was a flyer himself, who would have played with Ballinteer's senior team. So under 12s or 14s, we won an All-Ireland relay medal. Now,
is that John with AIG?
Yeah, John could shift now. He was a pacey guy.
No way.
Yeah. He was the finishing leg. I was the workhorse on the corner, so I was. If you ever see me running, I always have this bit of a tilt.
Yeah, I noticed that about you, all right. But you get your debut, and that excitement's there, and it's hard. Like when you're being told, don't say it to anyone. Did you say it to your family? Did you make them aware? Did you let them? That's one thing. I remember when Peter said it to me. Because I'm like a prawn cracker and I get injured, like just walking down the road. I was so nervous about getting injured. I was so nervous about saying anything to jinx myself. I was praying every night. I got really nervous. It actually nearly kind of got the better of me because I got so wound up about the whole thing. And eventually I had to tell my mum and dad, like, you know, did you crack and tell people or?
I probably didn't, you know. I would have been quite good at though. Like we played Naomh Fionn in an intermediate final in 98, or it was 97, 98. And I had hurt myself in a couple of weeks previous. So even at that time, Kieran Brennan was the manager. He said, tell you what we do. We'll say, you know, you're not playing, another. So I was used to this thing of being told you're not playing to be sprung. So I don't know if I probably didn't say anything. It wouldn't have been, I would have just said, I don't know, Anton, there hasn't been a team picked. And I probably did that all through my time with Dublin where, you know, I didn't go blabbing if we were not supposed to say something, I just didn't say anything, you know. And while you might have got a bit of flack at home and it was a busy house, my house was, you know, I just said, I don't know, there's no team picked, I didn't know anything. And then when the team was announced, they say, you must have known. I said, oh, well, I wasn't allowed to say anything. It was never a big deal made out of it, you know.
Yeah. But it's obviously getting harder and harder to do that now. Like I think with the amount of people that are in around the setup between players, backroom staff, like things get out when they shouldn't get out. And I know Jim McGuinness gave out to a few people for stuff that got out, and obviously some people have suffered from it. But it does become really tricky about holding on to something like that, especially when it's something like your debut. And I remember an incident where Kev McMenamin was told we knew he'd be starting, and it wasn't out in the papers. No one knew about it. But then the day of the game, people found out that Kev was going to be starting, and we don't know how he got out of the camp. And I remember how hurt Kev was, because he didn't tell anyone, didn't tell his parents. Like, when you want to tell your parents, the first thing, obviously Brian was playing for Dublin, and that just caused a bit of an issue, not a massive issue, but the fact that someone would leak it, where Kev had to keep it from his family and everything like that. I think that things like that are really hard, and you have to be a certain kind of player to be able to hold on to stuff like that.
Yeah, I get that situation, but I didn't ever feel I owed it to tell anyone that what was going on. So I always felt to be sitting in those meetings was, a privilege. So if something was said, that's where it stayed, because if it was for the betterment of the team, well then fine. I was happy to take it on the chin when it came afterwards and such. But I can understand where something leaks out like that. There probably wasn't the same. Maybe there wasn't the same coverage that goes with the current crop, so everything is gold news now, I guess, with the current generation. Back in the early thousands, there was other stories maybe going on whereby leaks like that maybe didn't happen as often, but it certainly wasn't ever anything that bothered me, and I still talk to the folks at home, so they're obviously not too put out by it.
That's because you need childminders.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you were in that Tommy setup, the Tommy Carr setup now, I remember Collie Moran telling me about it, like going down to the Phoenix Park, having to get the bus down, and just the sheer dread. Like, it wasn't dread in a way of he wanted to be there. Everyone wants to play for Dublin, so you're going to get through it. But looking back now, he's like, gee, how did I do that training that was put in front of you in the army barracks? It just sounded like the toughest. And is that the army background obviously coming through? Like, just how tough was that for you? Or did you were so happy to be there, you didn't care?
No, it was tough. No, the happiness leaves you fairly quickly. In fairness to, like, in my time with Tommy Carr, there was probably a shift from the, and I wasn't there in the first couple of years of Tommy's reign, from laps to Tommy started to look at, I think Liam Hennessy was the guy's name who was involved with Irish rugby at the time, where the training stopped being about laps around the field and suddenly became more focused on, you needed to build power in particular areas to build your speed. So then let's do the work that builds that power, and then let's work on the speed piece. So while there was, certainly some dog sessions done in the Phoenix Park and up Battle Hill, and, Tommy had a great saying of he'd just shout with me and he'd take off on this gallop after, you'd already done 5K and you were trying to keep up with him. But he started to move it into a more focused training around sprinting and developing your speed so that you could do your last sprint as well as you'd done your first sprint. So that, 2001 period, for me personally, I was flying, and you touched off this a little bit earlier. It was top of the ground stuff. I was this light kind of Springer type guy who loved running. We were working on areas of your body that would allow you to be as powerful as you could be in sprints. So you were just, churning out those runs, and you were able to keep going all the time, So in fairness to Tommy Carr at that time, he brought in what were newish, I'd say, methods of training to try and help the team get to the next level. He was very unlucky in his management reign at that time. There was a Leinster final, arguably left behind, where we were, 6 points up with Kildare. In 2001, we probably could have beaten Meath, albeit, Meath were a good, strong team at that time. So it was just unlucky that we didn't get over the line. You have the Kerry and the Maurice Fitzgerald score, whereby that doesn't go over all of a sudden. It's a different picture and landscape. I know there's lots of if, buts and maybes, and that doesn't make everything perfect. So he had certainly moved where, training had been at, from what I can gather previously in Dublin setups, which maybe had been more, heavy around those laps and big long sessions, where it was much more focused around strength and speed and conditioning guys to, what do you travel in a Gaelic football game? They're short, sharp bursts. You don't do, 3,000 metres around and around continuously. So it's a different type of speed you need as opposed to an endurance level,
Yeah, and I know exactly what you mean, because I remember under Clarkey's training, when you'd walk out of the Royal College of Surgeons pitches and you'd see the cones, you'd creep out, see what cones are laid out, and you say, oh shit, no, it's long distance running, and there's loads of cones, so there's loads of running. But just, I suppose when I was talking to Collie and Shane, Collie was young and just wanted to be there, enjoy it. And I think Shane is in the same boat as you on this, that you do it because you had to do it, but when you see it, you go, oh my God, what's ahead of me here?
Yeah.
But that didn't really seem to change under Tommy Lyons then. It was just like Casey spoke about this, about running the letters.
Yeah, and Tommy did a lot of that stuff, so he'd run a W, which was, obviously the shape of a W. So he did enjoy some of the laps at times. He particularly liked bringing around Leopardstown Racecourse after a championship match, which he called, I think he phrased it as truth serum, which was to try and, dog a fella after they probably celebrated a bit too much on a Sunday evening or maybe a Monday evening. He certainly didn't shift hugely from where Tommy Carr had brought it. Certainly, the long distance laps and all that type of stuff was certainly gone at the time I had started coming through on it, But there were probably two different styles of manager. Tommy Carr was obviously military, so it was, all that background to it, where Tommy Lyons had brought Kilmacud Crokes through and probably had a different way of dealing with players, that we'd say, than Tommy Carr had, So both obviously very effective in terms of what they were trying to do, but very different in terms of their styles.
And the styles were different. There's obviously more players coming through then in 2002. That hard training, and I know it was tough, and I know players really struggled with it, having talked to a few lads. You as captain, what do you have to do to keep morale going in them situations where everyone...
Finish the laps.
Just shout that, yeah.
Look, in fairness, in 2002, you think of the guys around the place, Paul Kern, Jim, Desi, Declan Darcy, there was like just natural born leaders in that dressing room. So for Tommy Lyons coming in, maybe it was a case of, putting a new face in terms of, this is a newer generation of guys coming through, and you think of the likes of, Barry Call and Alan Brogan and these new guys that were coming into the setup at that time, that he was maybe just trying to, put more of his stamp on it rather than what had been there previously or whatever. So, as captain, I wouldn't say it was much of a shout or a roar. It was more, that, I fitted what Tommy wanted in terms of maybe somebody who was new. There was a different way of Tommy trying to do things, and then there was a different group of young players that maybe he felt there was a connect there. So it was never a case of shouting at guys to get through it. You certainly, helped out where you could, and you were trying to lead by example. The greatest one of those is Stephen Cluxton. He was never a guy that I have ever encountered who shouted and roared. Now, he could give you an earful, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't so much about what he said. It was more how he carried himself and how he trained, how he played, how he prepared. And if that's what you're setting your bar against, well then, the rest of the guys have something to live up to. So I know Stephen Cluxton, but certainly I wasn't one for shouting and banging tables in the dressing room. It was more trying to lead by example, because you had guys who had tasted success before, who were well able to talk in the dressing room and had, far greater experience and knowledge of trying to help guys to achieve at that stage.
Yeah, and I look at that team in 2002, there was a lot of new people. Like, obviously Ray had an unbelievable year. John McNally was coming through really well. Like, there was new blood coming through. You spoke about Alan and Barry as well. There did seem to be a lot of leaders there as well. Not necessarily in the starting 15 as much, but in the whole squad, there seemed to be a lot of leaders that could get you over the line there. You still had a lot of characters to deal with as well. So, like, I just touched on him there, one of your club mates. What was it like to have John McNally in that setup from Ballinteer,
Johnny, Johnny was great. He's, he's as you see him as such. There's no, it's just honesty from, start to finish as such with him. So what he gives you on the football field is pure honesty, and it's the same when you have him around the place. But he loves a good giggle, there's no doubt about it, So to have, when you have someone from your own club involved, you've obviously got a natural, connect there on a field. So, while you mightn't, think it subconsciously, maybe you're looking for him on a pass, or you're hoping that he's looking out for you on a pass, or you might get on the end of some move that he's been involved in. And he'd been involved in the Dublin junior teams as well.
Yeah.
He was stalwart and has been for years with Ballinteer. So he was a great guy, to play with. So even for him to, if you look at Dublin in 2002, and, you talk of all the guys who had great seasons, and Ray and Alan coming through and that, if you look at, maybe what captured Dublin in their essence at that time was the work rate Johnny McNally delivered across the full forward line. No fella passed out by him without getting at least 10 belts. Now, whether they were legal or not, I'm not quite sure. But it was just relentless and ferocious in his tackling. And it was from that, this intensity grew in the forwards, which meant it was dead handy for us fellas in the back.
Yeah. Finally.
But that's where that, intensity, he just led by example in terms of that intensity he had. You know, so for him to have the success he had, it was a pity he wasn't around longer into the panel. He was certainly good enough to have been around a little bit more, but you know, just injuries and other things probably got the better of him at that time. And you know, when sometimes you fall out of the setup like that, it's very hard to get back in again when you've carried a knock or an injury that you just can't get, you just can't shake, you know.
But how did you find being able to go between both? So to be that leader and to kind of, as you said, lead by example and put the right foot forward in all the training that you were doing and in matches, and then to still have the crack in the Eagles with the lads. Did you find that tough, or was that just something that's naturally you, like, you know, it's just your persona as a person?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was as crack orientated in the first couple of years. It was probably a little bit more sheepish, you know. It was only when you're kind of get your seat in the dressing room that you start to then, you know, maybe have a go off, guys. And look, my nature is you know, quite light-hearted anyway, so I'd never set out to offend anyone, but you know, I'd always be looking to see if there was an angle to crack an old gag if there was one going or whatever, you know. Sometimes that went down well, other times less so, but I guess you have to judge your audience and judge the time for those type of things, you know. So, you know, there's a time for being serious, and then there's a time for maybe having a laugh. I tried the old earphones in the, you know, going into matches and that kind of stuff, but I'd much sooner be talking. So I just needed to find someone that I could talk to and maybe release some of that energy. Whereas if I put in earphones and tried to, you know, focus the mind a little bit, that probably would have cost me more than I would have gained from it. So it was just my personality to bounce off guys, and that gave me a bit of a lift as opposed to zoning in, if that makes sense.
So yeah, like going in on match day then, and we see it now with the big headphones, and again, I'm guilty of that. And it kind of towards now, even with the club level, I don't like having them around as much. Like, you know, I like talking to players and having a bit more of a crack than being just so isolated, focused, and trying to think of everything. And I see players now as well, when they're in the dressing room, they're just in the corner, so focused, so diligent. Did you find that like as your career progressed, that your approach to games changed? Like where you just, so like you had so much going on, so much excitement about it, but then the more you're around the setup, the more you're playing these games, now you're a captain. Does your approach change? You just start easing and things become a bit more, I wouldn't say lax, but a bit more comfortable when you're in the surroundings?
Yeah, and like everyone prepares differently, I guess, you know. So whether it's earphones or chatting or whatever it is, you know, everyone has a different way of trying to get their you know, their head together for what's coming. So did it change? Not overly so. Like, you know, if I think back to playing with Ballinteer, when we were playing championship matches, you know, some of us had designated cars we travel in, and you know, I travelled with a guy, Eamon Lawler. We used to listen to the radio and be joking and crack going across the games, championship matches. There's no buses or that. You wouldn't travel together or any of that kind of stuff. So that probably then was me when I was going into any other kind of setup. That was just what I thought was the normal way of things operating or whatever, you know. But then you have to realise that some people just don't want to be spoken to on match days, and you've got to stay away from those people. And other people get quite apprehensive, so they don't want you to be seen to be laughing, because then there's maybe an assumption that this guy's not taking that, you know, serious. So it changed in that you maybe modified yourself to know what was happening in front of you, to be aware of who you needed to be, who you could have a laugh with and who you should just stay away from. But, you know, I think you need to be at peace yourself around what way you're prepping for games, because if you're trying to please everyone else, you're ultimately going to impact on your own game. As I said earlier, I guess where I probably struggled a bit later into the career was not so much the prepping for games, it was more about you know, questioning. I started maybe to analyse more of the stuff and what could potentially happen in games. And I don't mean visualisation, I mean, you know, seeing scenarios playing out in the worst possible case, which then starts you to get a little bit more apprehensive. So rather than playing free-flow football, you start to become a little bit edgier on the ball as such, you know. So if there was one area I'd love to have, you know, probably focus on a little bit more and done more work, it was probably that mental understanding of, you know, push away the bad thoughts and think of the more positive ways of preparing, so that you didn't suddenly find yourself being a little bit more cautious on the ball, that you were still playing the way you had when you originally came into the panel. And I'd say the couple of years under Tommy Lyons where I maybe wasn't getting as much game time was more as a result of me, I don't call it self-doubt, because, you know, I was still part of a panel, so I obviously knew what I was trying to achieve. But certainly I wasn't playing with the freedom that I had come in with. So did my preparation change and how I built the matches? I wouldn't say the preparation changed, but certainly my thought process became more heavy around what was going on in matches, that then had an impact on me in terms of how I was impacting games, and meant I didn't get as much game time in those couple of years.
Did you ever see a sports psychologist about any of that? Were they around back then?
Yeah, there was, we had some people come in and talk to us, in fairness, at different stages. Tommy Carr had a guy in, Neil O'Brien, who was excellent. But, different managers had different views around, how that stuff worked. And you probably didn't realise at the time that maybe standing up and talking about that and sports psychology maybe wasn't as popular then as it is now as such. And that's not, that I was looking to do the popular thing by any means. But it probably just wasn't something someone said to me, did you ever think of? And then I didn't think of it. So there was probably a couple of years where you were had that element of, I'm holding back here, there's something not right, So I was then trying to, under Pillar, in fairness to the management team here, they helped rediscover that, and then I got back into the team again for a couple of years again after that. So it's as much to maybe do with me, how I was, seeing the world at that time, as opposed to maybe, sports psychologists or whatever helping me out, I guess, a little bit,
I find that really interesting, because I remember when I actually went to see Enda McNulty, and I was kind of falling out of favour with the game. I was getting injured too much, and I wasn't playing to the level I was hoping to play at. And I just met with him in the off chance. We actually ended up having a follow-up session. We spoke about Brian O'Driscoll. He said Brian went through a similar thing where he just fell out of favour with the game. There was loads of stuff being printed about him that kind of took his attention away from the game. And all he did, he said, he just sat down with him and got him to watch YouTube videos of all the unbelievable things he's done. Now, I wasn't on time with a YouTube clip, so I had to get on to it.
And YouTube wasn't around when I was playing. And in fairness, Glen Rowe was already taped on that, so what could you do? Your greatest day in Dublin was taped over by Blind 8 or Glen Rowe or something.
Yeah, so I just picked a slideshow for your one. But it was amazing. It was actually like, what it is, it's retraining your brain to know that that's still in you, that's still there. It's just about unlocking that potential. And I kind of, towards a lot of stages with my years with Dublin, I would have done a lot of work with that, because I know you'll see it now with players. Some players buy into sports psychology, and I'm sure you'll know this when you're doing your analysis for your punditry work, that you can see it in the backroom staff. You nearly look at the backroom staff in most county teams is bigger than the panel these days. It's just the amount of people that have, the amount of people they have for support around you. Like, when you look back, do you think if you had the same kind of panel that's available to the current Dublin team, that it would have extended your career, or you would have had a different style just with the amount of support that they have?
It probably would have helped in the probably second, third year of Tommy Lyons' reign, in that if you'd probably spoken to someone, they probably would have reframed exactly as you said, the good stuff that you do, Under Pillar, it probably got to a stage where, I was coming to 30. I had fallen, when I say fallen out of favour, there was other guys who come in, who were playing well and were deserving of places on the team. And it probably got to a point where, having played and having experienced the highs of playing, it then becomes very difficult when you're not getting game time to sit and watch. So unless there's some hope that you're going to get game time, it's very hard was certainly very hard for me to stay around when I didn't feel that opportunity was going to come. So when I left the setup in early 2008, having spoken to Pillar, it was just probably an understanding that time, look, you'll certainly compete for a position, but there's guys ahead of you in the pecking order. And it wasn't that I didn't feel you could challenge those positions. It just felt that, maybe the challenge was going to be more for me to keep going, and that it might be better just to step away rather than be on the sideline getting, annoyed that you weren't getting game time, having struggled to get a bit of game time through 2007. So I couldn't see this massive shift coming in 2008 that I was going to suddenly get more game time. So would it have extended the career? Maybe, maybe not. But, I don't look back and think, if only I'd done that, I could have hung around Dublin for another couple of years. It got to a point where there was probably an end point for me, and I said, look, I'm happy enough to call it here. Shook hands with Pillar, and that was kind of the end of my time. That was it.
You did well to hide that frustration. Whatever frustration you felt about not playing and not being where you wanted to be in regards to pecking order, around the setup, like, my experience of you was always jovial. And I remember that Clucko, Lally did something stupid. I don't know what he did. I can't remember now, but he did
only one thing.
And Clucko like goes, oh my God, where's Gogsy, where's Sennin? And I was just like, that's my experience of having you guys around, was that whatever frustration you had, you didn't show it. You always came to training jovial, good crack, and bouncing off lads and encouraging lads and bringing lads along. Was it tough trying to hide that frustration?
Yeah, like when I say frustration, you obviously always feel that you're pushing the right direction and that you're going to get a shot at it, you know. So, like, you know, you're frustrated initially, and the whole world is against you, and you know, that's it. I'm fed up. You know, everyone's wrong. I'm right. You know, but you know, when you look at it, then you know, there's 5 or 6 selectors or whatever. There's a team of guys there as well. So there must be something not right that you're not getting into the team, and be it, you know, skills, be it ability, be it something that's gone wrong previously, whatever the reason is, you know, you can carry that with you and it'll impact in what you do at training, or you can try and, you know, rise above it. And, you know, ultimately what I was trying to achieve was winning All Ireland with Dublin, and me being the sourhead going around the place was going to impact on the rest of the group. So, you know, while it was hard, you were getting out, you were playing with, you know, the top footballers in Dublin at the time. There was an opportunity to get a Dublin jersey in Croke Park. There was an opportunity to get game time in Croke Park. So all the stuff hadn't changed from what you initially set out, what you wanted to do at the start in 2000. It was just that you were unfortunately on the bench rather than on the playing field. But I still felt at that time I could make a difference if given the opportunity. You know, in 2007, I didn't get a huge amount of game time. So it made the decision heading into 2008 that little bit easier. But I would have gone back in 2008 and been the same jovial person around the dressing room, because the aim was for the team to be successful. It wasn't about me being, you know, top dog. I'd have loved to have played more games, absolutely. But it was about, you know, what could I bring to the team, to the group, to allow us to win something. Unfortunately, we didn't get over the line in terms of All Irelands. But the success we had with the Leinsters at the time, when Leinsters were hard won, and that's not being disrespectful to the Leinsters that have been won in the last 10 years, you know, there was real sense of achievement in those Leinster titles and a real party that followed after them. So, you know, the enjoyment for me was all of that stuff that went with it. You know, could you have got more out of your playing time? Yeah, it'd have been great to have played more in 2007 and maybe hung around for 2008. But look, that's the way my cards fell, and everyone doesn't get the big send-off at the end of their career, you know. So mine ended and I was happy to move on, and I got back to the club playing again. So, you know, I had a good innings. I'd never give out about it, you know.
Yeah, and when I look at send-offs, I always think of Alan just got the best, the dream scenario ever, and I don't know anyone else who's been able to kind of step away from inter-county football the way he did. But I like when you were thinking about the decision in 2007 throughout the season, was that in the back of your head that, like, coming into that game against Mayo, were you thinking like, this is it, I'm going at this hammer and tong now, this is my last hurrah? Had you made that decision, or was it when you stepped away in the winter you just said, oh, look, my heart's not in this the way it needed to?
I had played in 6, which I think was probably Mayo. 7 might have been.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I'm just trying to think. No, I hadn't made any decision. You know, like, when you're not getting game time, you'll always have the hurler on the ditch saying, oh, you know, you're good enough, you should, you know, walk away and that. But, you know, that's never on the cards, you know. You know, I made a commitment to be involved with the Dublin team for whatever, that year in particular. So it was never a thought process of, once this is the last game, I'm out the gap here, you know. But when it finishes and, you know, you have discussions afterwards with players, with management, and you get you have an innate ability to get a read of people and where you think you sit. I just didn't get a sense that, you know, I was 1 to 15 initially in their thought process. And having gone through 2007, and there's a huge commitment. You touched off it. Recently, I'd gotten married, you know, so we were newly married. There's a huge commitment to it. So, you know, do you go back for another commitment where you feel maybe what you've strived to get, you're not rewarded with in terms of game time? So at the end of 2007, I didn't hang it up by any means. I got into 2008, considered it, had a few chats with some of the guys, talked to Paul as well, and then just decided, look, I'm not sure I'm willing to go back into this, given that I can't see a route of getting game time at the level I'd like it to be at, you know. So it would have been great to get a send-off and a big fanfare, but as you rightly said, it just doesn't fall that way for most people in a top-level sport in any walk, you know.
No. Like, I know how hard that, like, in a weird way, at least you got to leave on your own terms. Like, you know, you got to call it. It was your decision.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you made that decision on a January driving into Royal College of Surgeons and then seeing what was ahead of you and just reverse back and then made a decision then or what. But I know, I read this and I don't know if it's true or not, that you were looking to try and get into journalism before your inter-county career. Is that correct? Sports journalism?
Yeah, I did a postgraduate in journalism in Griffith College in whatever 99, I'd say it was. So I had kind of hooked up with I'd been doing some stuff with the Evening Herald. I'd started out doing some of the club GA reports. Probably came across you with some underage game where I probably spelt your name wrong.
Every man will give out you for that. No fault over to you.
Yeah, exactly. Giving you a 6 when you thought you deserved an 8, So,
writing in the club notes.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I started off doing a little bit of that and then moved into some of the more mainstream type reporting. But then the knock came about getting involved with Dublin. And then when you were starting to get into the Dublin setup, it was hard then to be, trying to report on GA bits or whatever, So I ended up doing a bit of teaching for a while. It was one of those hopping between jobs, Ended up doing a bit of teaching for a while and then took up a job with, AIB. Arc Life is the life insurance company at the time, but with AIB in 2002 or thereabouts, and I've been there ever since, So they've, in my playing career, were a great supporter in terms of work and sport balance, I guess. But yeah, journalism is still a passion there. I would have obviously written a good bit, some columns back in the time when I had finished up. I don't write them anymore. But it was a great. I'm not sure. I obviously got the gate there. We won't go there. No, but I used to enjoy doing that because you still have an interest in the game. So if you're asked then to give your opinion on it, there's a value in that someone has seen that you have a good read of the game. So I'd like to think while you might be doing, journalism piece that, I'm watching a game, you have a good read of it. So if it was hopefully to get back involved in coaching or management and with an under-10s team in Donabate where I am now, you have a good read of the game and a good read of players that you might be of some way beneficial to some management setup as you maybe move in down the road a little bit and have time to get involved.
Would you be thinking of management? Like you have, like you're coaching development squads now as well, or you've been in around development squads over the last few years, have you?
Yeah, a good few years ago now, we got involved with a development squad. God, I don't know how many years ago it is. This stage, Kieran Whelan was probably the lead manager on it, and we got involved. But a good while out of that. In fairness, time-wise, like with family and that, it just didn't suit time-wise because actually the commitment grows in those development squads as it moves out the older years or whatever. So I just knew I wouldn't have a commitment or a time to get through it at, into a minor championship. So I said I better step away before that time or whatever. So I'm probably out of it. God, it must be 6 years or so or more or whatever. So I haven't been involved.
Jeez, you're really showing your age now.
Yeah, I'm old. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, COVID's age even more now when I'm married.
But look, I'm involved, as I said, with the under-10s in Pats there, and it's great, because you're able to get involved at a level where you're still, it hasn't got too technical and you're not asking to do a huge amount. It's just very much about go out and play and enjoy yourself and, try this with your right foot or your left foot. So that's really enjoyable at the minute around it, So, management requires a huge amount of time, much more so than playing. So you want to make the right decision when you're moving into it, Well,
I'm delighted to hear that the under-10s aren't adopting mass defences and systems and everything like that. And the fun element is still there because it's still...
Now you can have fun doing mass defences.
As the defender.
Yeah.
But your kind of love for journalism is still there now because you're still doing obviously a bit of punditry work with Tina G. How are you finding that?
Look, TG Carr have been great for me in both when I was playing and when I finished up. I'm sure, the people in the Gaeltacht areas of the country go, oh my God.
Particularly every second word, just throw out an Irish word, yeah?
Particularly when you're on with someone like Tommaso Flaherty, who's beautiful Irish, And look, the live games and that stuff on the sideline is brilliant because you're right at the cut of it. You're getting into matches, you're getting to give your opinion on something that's happening there in front of everyone, particularly the co-commentaries. So, the matches with, league games, underage games, the amount of coverage that they do is phenomenal. So to get the opportunity to be on the sideline is great. And if there's an opportunity then to do a bit of writing around that, that's, where passion lies around journalism and writing and that kind of stuff. So you're still getting to, scratch an itch, for want of a better way of...
I was actually just about to say that. Because even with AIB sponsoring the club championship as well, and I know you're involved in that with different things as well, like you're probably really involved in the GAA now more than ever, in terms of you have so much going on between the club stuff, the TG Carter stuff, even Pat to Donabate, like, you know, the club stuff that's going on. You're probably around them now more than ever, I'd say.
Yeah, and you know, I went into a role in AIB a couple of years ago that very much connected with the sponsorship piece, you know. So to be involved at that level and to see some of the work that they were doing on the sponsorship and the GAA Club Championship and the County Championship stuff was brilliant, you know. So you were literally, you know, working in a role that was tied into GAA without it being actually a GAA role as such. So you were still working in the banking industry. So it was great from that respect. And internally then, you know, from an AIB point of view, you had the outside GAA knowledge, which you were able to bring in-house as well. Yeah. So, you know, it worked both ways around it, I guess. So it was fortunate enough to land into that, you know, position as such as it was at the time. But look, you know, GAA is, I think, is one of those things that's in your blood. I was brought up on Roscommon football. My dad is Roscommon. My mum is, you know, Roscommon. So, you know, I was brought up on Harry Keegans and Enon Gavins and Dermot Earleys and Tony McManus's and these guys. We would have gone down to Roscommons for summers, and Hyde Park would have been your den at the back of the goal, the graveyard den, because that's where the hard fellas were, you know. That's where you hung out, you know, and you were watching these kind of championship matches with, you know, real legends of the game at that time. So you got a great passion from those type of matches. So, you know, while, you know, Roscommon heritage is in the background, it was always my ambition to play for Dublin, being born and raised here or whatever, you know. But, you know, that whole GAA passion just fuels you through your life. And I think it's just something that's in the system, so it's hard to shake it.
Yeah, no, like, especially when you're spending weekends down, because I know you're doing a lot of work now with the punditry stuff. As a player, we all have places that we don't like to go and play in, and Ockram is one of them for me. Being a pundit, is there anywhere that you just hate going? You're just like, oh, don't want to do this one now. Come on.
Yeah.
Name and shame the place.
The Gantry in Portlaoise and O'Connor Park in Tullamore, like they on winter's day, they can be the coldest place in the world. But one of the coldest outposts has to be level 7 in Croke Park on a cold day, because the sunlight isn't come anywhere near you. If there's a breeze at all, it whips around. So when you're sat out there if you're on, you know, up on the 7 and you're doing a COCOM or whatever, it can be absolutely Baltic up there, you know.
I'm sure on the media level. I'm sure you can still get a cappuccino.
Pardon?
I'm sure you can still get a cappuccino up there, unlike Hyde Park or somewhere like that.
Yeah, well, cappuccinos are better in the Hyde, and you get a free spoon with your ice cream tub as well, which is unbelievable stuff. The side of the pitch, even Croke Park, the side of the pitch can be very cold, particularly on St. Patrick's Day when the finals are on. Club finals, you know, I think if you look back through history, have probably been the coldest day of the year for every year, as far as I can remember, you know, particularly when you're working with TG Carr.
You must enjoy it though. Like, do you enjoy, like, I know coming out for a few club games now, I've seen you on the side of the pitch. Do you ever want to slay a player that you played with before and just kind of hold back, or have you ever just kind of, are you just yourself? Like, you know, I know at times you kind of have to, like in regards to GAA, everyone knows one another. You're kind of very close with a lot of lads that are still playing, especially around the club scene. Have you ever found yourself just going, I want to really tear into him now? Just that was the most stupidest thing I've ever seen, or are you just a bit PC?
Look, I you know, I've never set out to do that. I'm sure I've offended people and stuff I've written or said, you know. So, you know, it's never an intention that you're looking to run a fella down, because everybody out there playing is trying to do their best. And some days it works, some days it doesn't, you know. And, you know, why a guy may or may not be on a team for a given day or whatever, you know, it's not for me to criticise that. But, you know, I'm sure, having said that, I've said stuff before that have offended something, or I've written pieces in the paper, or maybe somebody hasn't been, you know, overly enamoured by it. You know, it's hard, absolutely, because GAA is a small circle, particularly, you know, if you're talking within Dublin, you know, you're going to bump into the guys, you know. So if you're writing about it, ultimately it's going to be seen and spotted, and someone will pick up on it. So it's going to have an impact. But the flip side of that is, you know, if you're being asked to give your opinion, well, then you have to give an opinion and hope within that what you're saying is not a direct criticism, but is an overview of what's happened in the game and how, you know, individuals named, if they are named, might have been involved in, you know, why that happened, or why that it wasn't good, or was you know, was bad or whatever. But certainly from you know, as I've gotten maybe a bit wiser with age and the, you know, on the punditry side of things, you certainly give more benefit to the doubt around what guys are trying to achieve. You maybe be more critical of why have they played a particular way or why the system has set up that way. You know, particularly when you see teams going defensive when they need scores and you're scratching your head going, I don't get it, you need to come out and play a bit.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's not being critical of any individual. It's more trying to give your view of what's happening in front of you. So I never set out to criticise anyone because, as I said, everyone's trying to do their best. But, you know, I'm quite sure that there's people would have a good cut off if they got a chance. You know?
Well, God help the person that ever criticised you, because I remember when we had the Venga bus and we were trying to kidnap you out of your gaff. And your mum came out and I was trying to pull your leg. I don't know what we were trying to do, get you out. And she started stabbing me with a toothpick and like really hard and then like into the back of my neck. And I was like, oh, never mess with that man and his family anyway.
I think she was fairly loose with a tea towel that night as well, you know.
Yeah, she was swinging that. She broke it.
I don't know. I remember that, you know, that when you talk about the Venga bus, you know, the guy going around the bus after, I think it was the Leinster semi-final or something, you know. They had been golfing and they were picking up guys in the road. So I thought, I was clear because it got fairly late and there had been some rumblings through a few text messages. It might be on the hit list. So I had gone up to bed thinking, you know, nothing's going to happen here, you know. And next thing, all hell broke loose and there was fellas in the stairs and it was, you know, a bus and out you go and that was it, you know. And probably the funniest thing anyone remembers is not whether I got on the bus or I didn't get on the bus. It's, you know, Lasso and Goggins there whipping guys. Or I didn't realise she had the owl toothpick there.
Yeah,
that's an extra level. Like, that's a notch up. You can see the stuff we had to deal with growing up as kids in Ballinteer. We had a hard upbringing.
Yeah, I know. I was delighted she hadn't got the wooden spoon and it was just a toothpick. Yeah, but then that, I suppose, no matter what, like, you always look back on the games themselves, but the journey along the way is always the kind of the special moments that you really look back on fondly, and no better memory than the Venga bus to reminisce about, I suppose. And that's a different episode. We'll do a group chat for that one of the days.
That'd be a good one.
I have
look, you know, when you boil it all down, Aim, and it comes down to the people you meet across, you know, club and county. Success is great, you know, representing Dublin is great, but when you boil it all down, it's like, you know, you pass a guy who's you play football against or with, you know, you say hello, you might have got on particularly well in the county setup, you might have bet the head off each other in club games, but there is a respect there that just comes out of being involved in playing, you know, top level football, a top level sport. So when you boil it all down, you know, you don't ever say, do you remember, you know, the final score in that Leinster final game, because fellas don't. But if you said, do you remember the night we went to whatever, most fellas will probably go, that was a great night, or we did whatever that night, you know, or we did 2 days of that. And they're the fond memories you take out of the whole thing. And I'd be still, you know, fairly close with a good lot of the guys from that noughties team and stay in touch with them. It's probably, well, we might have won in All Ireland. It's probably a good idea maybe to hook up with those guys, you know, for, you know, just reminiscing about old times. Because what you soldier together when you talk about the barracks and the Phoenix Park and all that stuff, there's a great bond there that doesn't leave you. So, you know, sitting down with those guys and having a drink would be great to do at some point again into the future.
Absolutely. And I think for me, having this platform to be able to do this is it's amazing, because it is nice to actually look back and have this conversation. But even when I started jotting down notes and do the research into these shows, like, you know, and you kind of, when we get into that environment of talking, you nearly go back into just having a crack and thinking in your bar. But when I look back on your career and other lads that I've interviewed career, a lot of people have soldiered a lot of hard yards and been on a lot of great teams and probably haven't got to the promised land that we would have hoped that everyone would have got to. But when you look back at it as a collective and the different players that have come, the different managers that have come, the different setups have come, you've highlighted there for me is that no one ever sets out to do the wrong thing. Everyone's in this together, and then bonds that you build in the army barracks or the Royal College of Surgeons become like lifelong moments that you can't forget, like, you know.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, the memories are all about when you look back on it, you know. Like, you can have, you know, VHSs and DVDs and all that stuff, but they don't ever get taken out, you know. I couldn't tell you the last time I sat down to watch a game like that, you know. I know
you have 3 kids, you're not getting time to do anything.
Correct. I know All Ireland Goal is on there. I got a text saying Dublin Armagh 2002. God, I couldn't put that on, you know. You'd struggle to watch those type of games, you know. So, you know, you're happy enough to know they happened in the background maybe, but watching it again, it was hard enough living it, never mind watching it again.
Look, guys, I have 2 questions to finish up with now. the second last one is best player you've ever played with.
God, good question. There's a good few, obviously, guys that have come through. One of the guys that stands out just because he was a guy you watched first and then you got to play with him was Paul Curran. He was exceptional. I maybe didn't get to play with him as long as his career was. I came in at the back end of it, but he certainly be one of the guys that stood out as just. I'd almost call him Mr. Consistency. You rarely ever see Paul Curran play a bad game or be involved in a bad game, club or county. And he was a great guy to have around the place. He was, was good crack, but he was serious when it came down to his football, and he always, delivered on the football field. And while I maybe only got the tail end of, Paul's career, in terms of a footballer to be on the same football field, but he was a serious operator. And as a wing back and a guy, as a defender, you were. Did that drop off there? Sorry.
No, you're all right. Go on, yeah.
Sorry. As a defender, that you're looking for guys that you could aspire to try and emulate, and not that I got anywhere near him, but Paul Curran is a guy who just jumps off the page as one of the best fellas I ever took down with certain.
Yeah, he's actually. A few people have mentioned him as regards players that they've looked up for that got why they wanted to get involved in GAA, but other lads that have played with him and have been lucky enough to play with him say just exactly what you said there. Consistency was just unbelievable. Last question. On the current Dublin team, which player would you wish you could play with?
Only one. Would 14 of those fellas not want just to play with me? No,
just to play with you. Yeah, no, they've all said that.
Five there. Well, what on the current Dublin setup? There's so many guys. Look, defensively, Jack McCaffrey is just phenomenal operator, and James McCarthy is probably. I've been fortunate enough to see James represent the bank a couple of times. And James doesn't know how to. To take things easy, when he's in, and that's it, So, while there's massive talent across the team there, it's just a guy, probably, is following in the mold of, a Paul Curran. Consistency personified, and just knows, he's an exceptional footballer, exceptional guy, actually. If I could, tug out, half back line with maybe James McCarthy, myself, and maybe one other, I wouldn't mind having a shot at it,
Yeah, and the one thing I like about James is there's no bullshit. Whatever role he's asked to do, he does it, and he does it well. As you said, consistency again over the last few years. I don't know if there's any player around Ireland that's put in the level of games that he has. It's a joy to watch some days just to see him go.
Yeah, he. I don't know if he ever did athletics. I've never asked him. I don't know if he ever did athletics as a young fellow or whatever. But when he takes off, his running style, he could definitely have represented Ireland in an Olympics, I reckon, because he just glides across the surface, So when you're watching him running, you think, God, this is gazelle stuff, He can really shift, so it doesn't ever look like he's busting his chops to do what he's doing, but he just glides across the floor. It's he's an exceptional athlete, he really is.
Yeah, I remember one training session we were doing. Mickey had us running. He just kept flogging us. We're just running, and he was barking at James to say, will you put it in, put the effort in? And James he was still winning sprints. It was effortless. He was just gliding along, and we were slow. I was like a bulldog, Giroud coming out the side. And anyway, Mickey just kept going at James to push him even harder. And James was red faced. You could see he was putting in the work. It just looked so easy to him. And then I was running back, heavy breathing, and Mickey just said to me, "Why don't you run like him?" It was just Mickey's way of just kind of kicking James to try and get more out of him and trying to infuriate him to push him on. But James's
record speaks for itself. Outfield and what he's delivered over the last number of years. His consistency is exceptional. So yeah. If I could slot into a half-back line with him, I'd fancy a cut off it,
Yeah, him and Curran are your ideal half-back line.
I'd be the housewife's favourite there at number 6. I'd let the lads do the running, I do the holding.
The holding one, yeah. Well, look, Gogsy, I really appreciate you giving me your time. I'm sure it was glad to get a break from the kids, even though they're hopefully asleep by now. But you always enjoy reminiscing. As I said, my memories of you are always one of real positive attitude, bringing lads along, having the crack, and whatever shit that was going on outside of football never carried into the dressing room. And I think that speaks volumes of your character. And when we touched upon there what management saw in you at that age, like, you know, why they gave you a chance, I think it is that sheer character you have and being able to relate to everyone in the dressing room. And look, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, but we definitely went over time, so I apologize to everyone on that. But again, it was just good to catch up.